Hello friends, welcome to Dr. Ossai Physiology Academy, DOPA for short. This is the place where we make the learning of physiology easy, exciting, and effective. Thank you for joining me. And if you're new to this channel, you're especially welcome. And if you love the content that we share, kindly click the like button and also the subscribe button. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't get to miss any new content that we drop. Now let's get started. So today we're going to be dealing with something very interesting. Introduction to reproductive physiology. What is reproduction? Of course, I know you know. Reproduction, producing another offspring of the same kind. Okay? But look at this. Now, when we started introduction to physiology as a discipline, we talked about what is life. But in reproductive physiology now, we're asking the question, what is the purpose of life? What is the purpose of life? Of course, I know in your different religious ideologies, okay, they've given you the purpose of life. Maybe to serve God, to please God, and all of that. But look at where both religion and even science, they agree. If you look very closely, you will see that the purpose of life actually is the continuity of life. Wow. That is it. The purpose of life is the continuity of life. That's why the concept of everlasting life, eternal life, it's one of the strongest religious concept and ideology. Without it, religion loses its power. Eternal life. Every human being, it has been programmed within us to desire to continue to live. Do you understand that? So the purpose of life, let me write it here, is the continuity of life. But unfortunately, you can't continue to exist forever. That's why religion will tell you that, oh, you go to a better place. If you do this and this, you have eternal life where you continue to exist forever, ever, world without end. But this is biology, this is physiology, this is science. Okay? Science has a different approach to understanding the purpose of life. And to ensure, to fulfill this continuity of life, the organism will have to produce another copy, another version, another younger, newer, fresher version of itself that will continue to exist when the old version becomes weak, worn out, and old, and later die out. The version continues to exist. That's why the perpetuation of the species, that's what reproduction is all about. So that there continues to be life of that kind. And that's why you are reproducing. That's the purpose of life, if you don't know. The reason why the body is maintaining health, which is homeostasis and everything you learn in physiology, is so that you can get to a point where you can reproduce after your kind and continue to exist. Do you understand that? It's a very powerful concept. This is a very interesting subject. So pay very close attention. So now, so reproductive physiology is telling us how does the body reproduce life. That's what we're going to be dealing with, the processes. So reproduction has to do with the different biological processes, step-by-step sequence that leads to the reproduction of life, the birthing of a new version of yourself in the form of another organism that carries your very essence, your genetic material. Let's go straight into it. Now, there are three things you must understand first of all. Number one is, what is the meaning of the word gonad? Number two, what is the meaning of the word gamete? Number three, what is the meaning of the word genitalia? This is where we begin reproductive physiology from. Okay? So the gonad is also known as what? The sex organ. The gonad is called the sex organ. And to be more specific, the primary sex organ. Primary sex organ. Okay? So in the male, this sex organ is known as what? So in the male, it's known as the testis, as there are two, like this. Okay? Singular testis, plural testis. Then in the female, we have what? Ovaries. Okay? So this is gonad. Gamete. What is the gamete? Another word for gamete is called what? Sex cell or germ cell. And in the male, it is known as what? Spermatozoa. Spermatozoa. In the female, it is known as ovum or egg. That's three names in the female. Or oocyte. Oocyte. So short form, you can also call this just in short form sperm. All right. So this is the gamete. Then the genitalia. The genitalia is the secondary sex organ. Okay? Secondary sex organ. And it's divided both into internal and external. Okay? We might not go too deep into it. We have both internal . So let's just mention one. Internal genitalia for male. Okay? You have what? You have things like epididymis. Okay? You have the vas deferens. Example, epididymis. You have vas deferens, etc. Then for the female, you have fallopian tube, uterus, okay, and superior to third of the vagina. You also have the cervix. So let's write it for the female. You have fallopian tube. We're going to deal with them in detail when we are dealing with each of these systems. Male reproductive system, female. So this is just an introduction. Fallopian tube, you have uterus, etc. Okay? Then external genitalia. For the male, you have the penis, and you can also add the scrotum. Then for the female, you have the clitoris, You also have what is known as vulva. Vulva, which you can say labia minora. You have labia majora. Sorry, majora. Okay, so these are the things you need to know as way of introduction. Let's not just rush into it without you understanding these very simple terms. You need to understand these terms. All right, so this is by way of introduction. Now you ask yourself, what is the purpose of the gonad? Generally, the purpose of the gonad is to produce this second one, to produce the gamete. So the testis produces sperm, and the ovaries produce what? Ovum or egg or oocyte. So the gonad, the function of the gonad, number one function is to produce the gamete, the sex cell or the germ cell. Another function, secondary function, is to secrete sex hormones. Let's write it. Let's write it here. Okay. Number A function. That process is called gametogenesis. We'll talk briefly on this in this introductory lecture. Then number B function of the gonad is to produce. So these are the two functions of the gonads, the testis, the ovaries. What is now the function of the gamete? The function of the gamete exists for only one thing: to combine with the complementary or the opposite gamete. That means the female gamete combine with the male gamete to produce the offspring. Okay, so that's the function of the gamete, for combination. Then what is the function of the genitalia? The function of the genitalia is to provide the channel by which that combination will take place, and in the female, where the new offspring will come out from into the outside world. That's the function. But the internal genitalia and all of that is to enable the meeting. It's like a channel where they will move to. Okay, so this genitalia, the sperm will move from this testis and move through the internal genitalia, enter the urethra and come out. And then the female genitalia, you have also a tract, okay, where they move and they meet. So that's the function of genitalia, the house and the channel for the movement and the meeting of the gametes. So you see this by way of introduction. By way of introduction. So the next thing we're going to be doing is now, what exactly is gametogenesis? What really happens? Because that's where reproduction starts from. Reproduction is telling you the process from the beginning that leads to the generation of a new offspring. So part of what we are going to be doing in reproductive physiology, we are still going to be studying even puberty, because that is where you develop the capacity as an organism to reproduce. While gametogenesis is where the sex cell develops capacity to combine with its complementary cell, which is of the opposite sex. Do you understand now? So after the break, we're going to be dealing with gametogenesis. Don't go anywhere after this break. All right, you're welcome back. So now, quickly, we're going to be touching on two key concepts that will help us to further understand this whole idea of reproduction. Okay, so gametogenesis, like we said, is one of the functions of the gonads, primary sex organs. Okay, so in the male, it is called spermatogenesis. Spermatogenesis. In the female, it is called oogenesis. So quickly, what is gametogenesis? What happens in this process? Major thing that happens in this process is the transformation of primordial germ cell into the mature germ cell, okay, which moves from diploid to haploid. What do we mean by all of this? This whole process will have two phases of meiosis. Meiosis 1, meiosis 2. Okay, so diploid. Now, what happens in the whole process of spermatogenesis? It's about the main gist there. It's about genetic material, how genetic material is separated, okay, and transferred to where it should be. Because the whole process of these two coming together, the sperm and the egg coming together, which is called fertilization, okay, is about a combination of genes. The whole genetic material that make up the human being, half come from the father, half come from the mother. And that is why we are talking of haploid, meaning half genetic material coming from the mother, half coming from the father. Now, to understand this, the nucleus, because everything here, you are producing a sperm, which is a cell, a sperm cell, okay, you are producing an egg. So they have their cells. So they have nucleus which contain chromosomes. And you know that in every cell you have what? 23 pairs of chromosome. So the whole genetic material is distributed in those 23 pairs. 23 pairs in the sense that, let's take one pair. Let's say chromosome 1. Chromosome 1 has a pair of chromosomes. Let's draw it like this. Okay? This is chromosome 1. So you have another chromosome, chromosome 2, something like this. Call it chromosome. So you have it like that, 23 pairs of chromosomes. So what happens is that genetic material in the process of meiosis 1 and 2 from one cell that houses all these 23 chromosomes, okay, will now become 4 daughter cells, each having half genetic material. Okay, unlike mitosis, that when mitosis is complete, you have 2 daughter cells that have full complete genetic material, diploid. Okay, 2 identical daughter cells. But in meiosis, you get 4 unidentical daughter cells. Do you understand that? So the whole process of this spermatogenesis or oogenesis is the transformation of all this, and it will go through a process of meiosis. Meiosis 1, meiosis 2. That is what gametogenesis is just talking about. And in the 23 pairs of chromosomes in every cell in human beings, 22 of those chromosomes are known as autosomes. Autosomes, okay? Let's write it here. Autosomes. While one pair is known as what? Sex chromosomes. So these sex chromosomes, let's say that this one now is a sex chromosome. In a male, one of this is X, one of this is Y. In a female, one of this is X, another one is X. So these two chromosomes, normally in the autosomes, they are regarded as homologous chromosomes. They have identical genetic material, okay? But in the male have 22 chromosomes that have homologous chromosomes, 22 pairs of chromosomes that have homologous chromosomes, because one of them, the sex one, doesn't have, they are different. Okay, so just let's not go so much into detail. Let's now go into the meiosis. So now in the proper spermatogenesis or oogenesis, what happens is that it starts from the primordial germ cell, which everybody has. From birth you have it. Okay, primordial germ cell. So this primordial germ cell now for the male is called primordial spermatocyte. For the female, it's called primordial oocyte. Okay, so the first thing that happens is there is growth. This primordial germ cells, there is growth. It grows bigger, and there is division. That division is mitotic division. Gives birth to two identical daughter cells. Okay, so the primordial becomes primary through a process of mitosis. It's still mitosis, okay, but there is growth, then mitosis to now give you what? Primary. So it now becomes primary spermatocyte or oocyte. Now, where meiosis happens is now from this primary. So the primary now undergoes first meiosis. Okay, first meiosis is when there is now separation of these homologous chromosomes. Okay, there's separation, division of homologous chromosomes. So you now have a primary spermatocyte or oocyte will now divide into two secondary spermatocyte or oocyte. Okay, so this meiosis 1 leads to two secondary, let's put it like this, secondary germ cells, secondary spermatocyte, secondary oocyte. All right, so what happens is that in the female, one of these will just be thrown out, will be extruded. It's called the first polar body for only females, so it doesn't happen to male. Then in the male, the two remain. Okay, you have two secondary spermatocytes after meiosis 1. Then another meiosis happens, which they've divided in the first. Then there's now a separation of sister chromatids. There's still another separation that happens. Okay, so there's now a separation that now really makes it into 4 different cells. Okay, so this one now divides in the male, this one divides into what is known as spermatid. So from secondary spermatocyte into spermatid, second meiotic division, spermatid. Okay, then this one also, so you have 4 for the male, but this one has been in the female, so you have only 1. So it gives birth to 2 cells in the female, and again another extrusion happens. This one dies off. So the female, after everything, meiosis 1 and 2, has 1 mature oocyte. But for the male, you have 4 mature spermatocytes, okay, which is now called the sperm. okay, fully as the sperm. Now the sperm in the male, after this spermatid, it goes into a process known as spermiogenesis. It will now be converted into the real structure and form of a sperm that has a tail and all of that, the middle piece. So I'm going to deal with that, right? The structure of the gametes. Okay, so spermiogenesis now converts it into the final mature sperm. All right, so that's what happens. Okay, the details of meiosis, where they talk about crossing over between these meiosis 1 and 2, there's an exchange of genetic material, okay, that happens in meiosis called crossing over, a recombination of gene between homologous chromosomes. Okay, all those details is beyond the scope of what we are doing, but this is what happens. So the final product of this gametogenesis in the males, you now have some sperms that have their sex chromosomes that are just X. Okay, then you have some sperms that the sex chromosome there, which has, you know, they're now half, they're just Y. So this Y will combine with the sex chromosome of the female at fertilization. So if a Y combines with the sex chromosome of the female, it becomes XY, which is male. If the X from the male and X sperm combines with the female, it becomes a female offspring that will be given birth to. Okay, so I'm sure you even know all that before. So that is what happens. So sex is determined at fertilization depending on the kind of sperm. That means it is determined by males and at fertilization. Don't forget this principle, that sex is determined by males, the type of sperm, and it occurs at fertilization. So the next stage of what we're going to be talking about in the introduction is now the differentiation. What happens? Sex has been determined, but there is a differentiation that gives you a female form, a male form. So in the part 2 of the introduction, we're going to be talking about sex differentiation and so many other things that you need to know. Classification of sex based on this sex differentiation. All right, so see you in the next video.